to quite literally nobody's surprise, Spider-Man in space and dealing with everything over there is a lot more interesting than whatever Norman Osborn is doing on Earth being the fake Spider-Man. Though two things. One, I still of course have to cover it if you want the overarching narrative of the story. And secondly, even though it is less interesting, it still does play with a lot of interesting stuff surrounding Spider-Man and his entire dwelling as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But my name is AJ here at The Hero Informer, and let's get into it. Though if you need a little bit of a refresher, while Peter is off in space trying to get stronger in dealing with the aliens over there, his absence in New York left a little bit of a vacuum in his life. So of course there's no Peter Parker, no Spider-Man, so a couple people stepped up to fill those plates. Ben Reilly, his clone, took the Peter Parker aspect of his life, and then Norman Osborn, of all people, yes, once his most hated arch enemy, became Spider-Man, taking up the mantle. Though after being checked by a now new organization that wants to kill Norman side of him, and now the other Spider people who want him to stop being the Spider part that he is now, he is having second thoughts about this entire experiment, as he's going on to call it, which is the exact thing that he is pondering here while he sits in his luxury New York penthouse above the city. How not only the experiment as Spider-Man is a failure, but also Norman Osborn himself is a failure, because once again his ego has taken over. No one asked him to take on the mantle, and least of all Peter himself. Of course, not even counting the other Spider people who fought against him and want him also to stop masquerading as Spider-Man and putting people inside of the hospital. He seems to have finally come to a conclusion about everything in this entire situation, going on to say, I did not protect my friend's Peter's dream. I was not good at being good. I humiliated myself and tarnished his good name, and I'm done. Which is kind of funny he says that, because once a Spider person says they're done, that's never the usual giving up point. They always get dragged back into the life in the mask of being the hero. Though, like I said before, Spider-Man is not just the hero Spider-Man, he is also Peter Parker. So with the actual Peter Parker gone, Ben Reilly has taken his place, and even his own life is having fallouts because of living this new identity that is Peter Parker, having to masquerade as him in the public and from his friends, family, and even at his job and other co-workers, putting a strain on his own heroic life as the Chasm, his new hero identity, and even his love interest here. Of course, she's mad that he has to spend a lot of time with another woman. Of course, that woman being his boss at his job, or Peter's job, I should say. Still the same situation regardless. And as we go to find out that this meeting he is supposed to have with her isn't just a normal business occurrence. No, it is something very personal that she needs Peter's help specifically with. Us finding out that it's something to do with her son, and how either he's in trouble, he's sick, or whatever's happening with him, she needs Peter's help to solve. Though that is an issue that we're not going to get too much on now, because just in Norman Osborn interrupts their entire meeting as he also needs to have a word with Peter here. Now, it doesn't make things any better as we find out that him and Maria, the lady here, Peter's boss, also have a little bit of a bad blood history with each other. Of course, both being in the business world, so it kind of connects there. And of course, things turn into a whole fiasco in a scene in the middle of the restaurant. Though eventually, in the middle of it all, Norman is able to slip a few words to Peter, telling him that it's over, that they're both done playing pretend and being people that they're not. Of course, Ben instantly putting two and two together and realizing that he, Norman Osborn, is the fake Spider-Man. Though of course all this is an attempt on Norman's end to try and separate and set boundaries to actually be a good person, even though he has failed in being that with his normal Norman business life and even the short-lived Spider hero life. He's of course still trying to do better and take every opportunity he can to make amends, which, I mean, you can't blame the guy for at least trying, right? Even though he has done so much evil and wrong that it might take the rest of his life and even beyond to even scratch making a dent in all of the wrongdoings that he has did in the past. Said wrongdoings are going to come back to haunt him literally physically in the present, as just then the side of the building explodes, in which the same villains and group from before that wanted to assassinate and kill Norman arrive here to do the same thing as well. Which, even as this is happening, we cut over to a little moment between Aunt May, which I think is pretty cool, and it just shows that everybody around him and people that were close to him, Mary Jane before previously, that Peter's just sudden disappearance because he told nobody and just left off world into a who knows where, galaxy, solar system, wherever out in space he is currently. But Aunt May is coming by his apartment every day or every week to check and leave notes to Peter. Now, of course, it's not Peter here answering the door, but Hollow's Eve, Chasm's girlfriend, but it still devastates Aunt May regardless. Back inside of the present though, as Norman is having another attack on his life, he goes on to say, I've been wondering when my would-be assassins would rear their head again. This attack does confirm a few theories. First, that this is not a professional rival in any sense. They're not looking for a quiet and precise execution. No, they want it public, messy, anything to associate his name with chaos. So instead of giving him that chaos, taking on Norman, at the very least, he can do something to change up their plans a little bit, change it back into the Spider-Man persona. Even though he quit and said he would give up, he is instantly drawn right back into it. Though in the moment as a giant robot is, attacking Maria, the boss lady from before, suddenly a metal disc, a shield gets thrown from behind, mind, and we see Kintsugi, or Captain Kintsugi, as he has dropped the captain word and is just going by Kintsugi now, show up once more. And still to this moment right here, we have no idea why or what his purpose even is. Like, he's just shown up a couple times throughout. Heck, he even saved Norman Osborn Spider-Man previously, and then disappears shortly after and is never explained or what his purpose is overarchingly. So he's still just a giant mystery there, though a mystery that does allow Spider-Man to buy time as he then swings in ready to take on this robot. And even as he arrives, he goes on to say, for a moment I stop and try to figure out who's behind this repurposed Spider Slayer, as just then a realization hits him. He has never worn the suit, the Spider-Man costume, and the persona in the light of day until now. His entire career as Spider-Man has been conducted strictly in the dark. So right now is different. The sun feels brighter, he feels exposed and vulnerable. Though of course the giant mech and robot and the people behind them, they essentially go on to say that they have no problems with Spider-Man, which is ironic that they're using a repurposed Spider Slayer suit. But they try to make their case saying that, if they fight, there's going to be property damage, and they're not trying to harm innocents at all. They're not monsters. Their only target is Norman Osborn, and Spider-Man of all people should understand why. He is evil incarnate, a murderer, manipulator, insane, which must be such a blow to his morale and everything he's trying to accomplish being good now. Being reminded of all the bad and evil he has done previously as the Goblin, an insane part of Norman Osborn. And he even realizes this as he is, caught in the moment beneath the grip of the robot, until he is saved once more by the kid, Kintsugi, throwing his shield and allowing Spider-Man to just jam it into the robot, which until now it looked like it was just some normal type of metal or, not anything special of material in the shield. But as you go to find out, it's probably got a little bit of vibranium or adamantium or some indestructible metal in it as well, because Spider-Man is able to use it to just cut through this machine like butter, eventually being able to literally cut the thing in half cleanly by, kicking the shield straight through it. So it's pretty freaking strong. And even as Norman finishes up the battle, he goes on to say that it's crazy to believe that one person, one image, one Spider-Man can make such a difference, because Norman knows truly good and well that he is not a good man. He is not a good person. Yet here in the skin, beneath the light of day in the costume, he feels like one, and it's terrifying. Yet he loves it all the same. Though afterwards, we do get a little bit more information about this kid, this new hero Kintsugi, as he's trying to be. Norman goes on to say that why is he even doing this? It's dangerous, fighting villains and risking his life. From his perspective, he's just a child with an expensive shield. Further going on to tell him to stop before he gets hurt. Yet the kid goes on to say that, he probably should, but he won't. Like, look at everything here today. They made a difference. And he wants that. He wants his life to count for something. Which in the Marvel Universe, New York, specifically the almost hub spot for heroes around the world, that should not be surprising or a revelation to anybody here. Though the villains and everybody behind the attack are furious that it has failed, except one man, as everybody's scrambling around trying to think of a new plan that their giant machine and what they hoped for failed. We see Roderick Kingsley also working with this group here. Not only that, but he says their mission was a success. They just need a little bit more expertise and a little bit more style. But this little group here trying to kill Norman Osborn isn't the only problems he has, because he has decided to put back on the Spider-Man costume and become the hero once more after, just literally deciding to call it quits. Though this decision here doesn't go unnoticed by a lot of people really. One, of course, the other spiders that told him and essentially ganged up on him to tell him to quit and stop and, don't put back on the costume. But also other villains take notice of this as well, in particular being Tombstone, who him and Peter have a interesting relationship in the past, because yes, while he is a villain and Spider-Man does fight against him, they almost have a, I wouldn't say working relationship, but something close to that. More accurately, as Tombstone even says, there was an understanding between them, and how even Tombstone realizes that something is up with him, Spider-Man. So he, of course, is going to find out what that is and why that is, because in his own words, he owes him that much. Which again, like I said, the other spiders really hate Norman Osborn masquerading as Spider-Man, as Miles decides to leave Osborn a very specific message, going on to say that the other spiders and I are giving you the benefit of the doubt because he, Peter, asked us to. But don't get it twisted, you're not Spider-Man, Mr. Osborn. So please stop, or we're going to have to make you stop. But at this point, Norman is just too far gone, too far into the idea of being a better version of himself, and being Spider-Man helps him achieve that. And of course, if Peter was in the same situation, permanently just giving in would be the last thing he would do, as Norman is back on the job and saving people. And he even comes to this realization in reality himself, as he goes on to say, when I became the Goblin, I told myself that it was just a way to accelerate a rise to power, when in reality, he just wanted to terrify and hurt anyone who stood in his way. But when he now puts on this costume, his skin, Norman simply tried to tell himself that it was to protect his dream. But Norman simply doesn't even know what Peter's dream truly is. Not really. You know, before, when he was fighting the Spider Slayer, he could have easily fought the robot as himself, as Norman Osborn, because it's no secret that the Goblin formula made him in the past and continues to make him very strong and agile. But the only deciding factor in that was that there were people inside of harm's way. And no one has ever seen Norman in any sort of suit, whether it be the Goblin or even the Golden Goblin or Gold Goblin that he was before very briefly. No one has ever seen him and thought, thank goodness Norman Osborn is here. Obviously, as you can imagine why. Though when he is him, when he is Spider-Man, Spider-Man is hope, and people need Spider-Man. And while yes, at the end of the day, he does eventually want Peter Parker to come home from wherever he is and retake the mantle fully, but right now, Norman Osborn, he needs to be Spider-Man too. And it's kind of interesting because equally while Norman here is finding his footing in Peter's absence and being the Spider-Man, Ben Reilly, on the other hand, is kind of spiraling further into chaos as trying to portray Peter Parker. As because even at Rand Enterprises, the giant science place where he is working, he is actually making a lot of progress, extraordinary progress at that, though it is all under a false identity. You know, he's not Ben Reilly, he is Peter Parker. Everything that he is achieving here is essentially for another person, even though he is a clone of that person and they're down to the DNA level kind of the same. In reality, it's not the same. He is his own person with his own memories and own feelings, whatever. Yet every good thing he is doing, there's no reason why it shouldn't be him. Instead, it isn't. It's Peter Parker, his original, his better, if you want to think about it like that in a way. So there's just a little bit of animosity building under the seams there, which might come back to play a big part later on. Though back with Norman, we see him and Maria, the same boss lady from before that was meeting with Peter, meet up now separately because, you know, they have a common denominator. Something was happening with her son and child, and Norman has a lot of experience with a son and dealing with a lot of problems in that sense, of course, referring to Harry Osborn. Though in the middle of him actually connecting with another person on a deeper level than just being a hero and slightly stopping a bad guy, he is interrupted once more. This time it being a police scanner that the Shocker is back, you know, the person he put in a hospital a couple issues ago. He is back and he's causing a lot of problems, which puts Norman in a very interesting position. One that he even calls out himself, as he even thinks walking off to go solve that problem, that how many times did Peter himself get stuck in a situation like this to help one or help many, support a friend or stop a crime? How did you survive letting Spider-Man ruin your life over and over again? Though the thing that is pushing him to go further and actually do the right thing and stopping the crime is a little bit of a mantra that he keeps saying to himself now. What would Peter do? Which is kind of very interesting seeing this from a third person perspective, and now that person being in the same position as Peter, as trying to live the double life of being a hero and a normal person with connections, friends and family, etc. Though Norman, after eventually making it to wherever that police signal went out to, we find out that essentially it was a trap. The Shocker's not there, of course. He's still very badly broken and beaten from before, and instead now it is Tombstone himself. Because as I said briefly earlier, Tombstone kind of wants answers about what happened to Spider-Man. Why is he more brutal? Why is he just not the same as he was before? Something that almost everybody can see. As he goes on to say, ever since that freak in the gladiator costume, of course being Hellgate, the person that literally beat Spider-Man half to death, ever since then, you've been different. You've been putting my men in the hospital, scaring the living daylights out of people. And of course it's bad for Tombstone's criminal empire business, and it's even worse for the neighborhood that Spider-Man has chosen to protect. In which this realization that Tombstone, to some deeper level, actually genuinely cares for Peter, or Spider-Man I should say more specifically, and his heroics. And being lectured here by a monster like Tombstone, it makes it very difficult for Norman to channel the trademark mercy that Peter is very fond of giving out to villains, heroes, and just everybody in general. And after Tombstone asks one more time, what did Hellgate do to you to make you like this? Norman goes on to say the one thing that changes everything going forward. He says, he reminded me that mercy is reserved for those who have earned it, which is just the total opposite of what Peter would have said in this moment. Peter or Spider-Man has never had the ideals of people having to earn mercy. No, it's just something that he gives out as being a hero, whether you're the worst bad guy ever or the best hero ever. He would try to help you or stop you and get you help to the same degree each time. And this, of course, just instantly allows Tombstone to know that, you know, this isn't Spider-Man. This is someone just masquerading with his costume and likeness, which actually relieves Tombstone as he is now able to send his ultimate weapon after him to attack. A new villain on the scene who has a very interesting power set if you really think about it, simply named PRX or Plague RX, which physically speaking, he doesn't look big or intimidating really in any traditional sense, but as soon as touches him, you know, makes contact with him, suddenly different orifices on his body just starts to spew out blood and he is in agonizing pain. As he even goes on to say, for an instant the world goes white and then there there is only pain, only the sound of things breaking inside of him, and only the sound of blood. As we find out that this new villain's powers essentially allows him to transfer pain, you know, all the broken bones and agony that he has given Shocker and his men before. This new villain here was able to absorb it, keep it inside of him, and then redish it out to Norman here. Now, of course, Tombstone doesn't exactly understand the science behind it and all, but he doesn't really care and just knows that he wants to beat on this fake pretender Spider-Man for even taking his place. Though here's where I'm really confused and really unsure about what exactly does this mean, because Tombstone picks up Norman's body and is about to start just beating on him like he has done to Spider-Man many times before. Except this time something's different, as once their fist collides, Tombstone's arm just breaks. Yes, Tombstone, the man whose main power is literally having unbreakable skin, enhanced durability, one who even fought Peter in the past, and he's never been able to fight him or hit him this hard to break his bones or cause him to bleed. Yet Norman here just completely dominates and overpowers him to a casual extent, confusing even Tombstone himself. Which on one hand is cool, seeing Tombstone being on the other end of a very brutal beating that he has given Spider-Man many times before, but on the other hand, just like, what? Is this more tech that Norman has enhanced himself with? Maybe he sprinkled a little bit of gamma radiation inside of his morning coffee, which, now that I think about it, maybe is something Norman would do to empower himself even further, but we just don't know at this point. What we do know is Norman is falling back into the same violence and habits that he has had before. As he even goes on to say, the code, the dream, the ideals, all gone like mist before the sunrise. None of this is what Peter would want to do, because Norman in this moment, he wants to win. He wants to hurt Tombstone. He wants him to die, as he of course just breaks the side of his face, causing him to bleed profusely. And even as he eventually is able to escape, this just kind of adds another list of people after him. Not only Tombstone here, who obviously is going to want revenge against this fake Spider-Man, also the other Spider heroes who want him to stop being Spider-Man, and even assassins before who took the Spider Slayer suit who want Norman dead. So at every angle there seems to be people attacking him and wanting to put him down, even though he's trying his best to do good. Though back over with Peter, or this fake pretender Peter, we see him at Rand Enterprises after hours just staring at the achievements that they have done, you know, but instead here it doesn't say Ben Riley, no, or the correct credit. It should be, instead it says Peter Parker. Ben here has given hours of his life, weeks, however long Peter has been gone, and instead all of the notoriety and credit is going to the wrong person. So instead, we're not sure exactly what he decides to do. Maybe he decides to sabotage all of it. Maybe he decides to change something to give himself credit. But whatever it is, it doesn't seem to be too good. And like I said, potentially could have a lot of consequences going forward. Though those are ones that we're going to see next time as this video and issue come to a close. If you have enjoyed, leave a like or subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this. As always, this was AJ here at The Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.